You know the feeling. It's 3 in the morning. You are absolutely exhausted, but your mind is just wide awake, replaying worries, anxieties, or maybe just completely random thoughts. If you've ever found yourself staring at the ceiling, just desperate for sleep, you know exactly how frustrating insomnia can be. For decades, scientists have been trying to figure out the cause, but a key part of the puzzle might have been hiding in plain sight, or, I guess, right behind our closed eyes. Let's dive into a fascinating new theory from a recent academic paper that might just change how we think about those sleepless nights.
So, the researcher who wrote this paper kicks things off with this quote, which is, of course, a heavy metal update to an old children's prayer. And it's just a brilliant way to show how the simple, kind of vulnerable act of falling asleep has always been tangled up with our deepest fears. It's an ancient human problem, but with a very modern soundtrack.
Now, to be clear, we're not just talking about 1 or 2 rough nights here. Clinically speaking, insomnia disorder is a pretty serious condition. To get the official diagnosis, you have to have trouble falling or staying asleep at least 3 nights a week for at least 3 months straight. And it has to be at a point where it's genuinely messing with your daily life, your work, your mood, your health. The big thing to remember is we're talking about a truly chronic and debilitating issue.
So, how have we tried to get our heads around this? Well, over the years, researchers have come up with several different models, and each one added a new piece to this puzzle.
Let's just quickly trace how our understanding has changed. So, way back in the 70s, you had the stimulus control model. The idea was pretty simple. We were just teaching our brains the wrong things. By working or watching TV in bed, we were basically conditioning our brain to see the bedroom as an alert zone, not a sleep zone. Then came the 3P model, which said insomnia is this perfect storm of predisposing factors, like being an anxious person, precipitating events, like, say, losing your job, and then the perpetuating habits we pick up to cope. Most recently, the cognitive model really zeroed in on the content of our thoughts, that endless worrying and mental chatter that keeps the mind buzzing.
And look, each of these theories makes a ton of sense, right? But they all left this one major question unanswered. Why does that pre-sleep state of high alert get so incredibly powerful and so hard to switch off for people with chronic insomnia? What's the real engine driving that feeling of being wired?
And this, right here, is where the new research makes a crucial pivot. It suggests we might have been focusing on the wrong thing, shifting the whole investigation from our thoughts in general to a very, very specific way that we think.
This brings up a really important question. What if the real problem isn't just what we're worrying about, but how those worries are actually showing up in our minds?
Okay, this is where it gets really, really interesting. This slide makes a critical distinction. We all have that inner monologue, that's intrusive verbal thought, the voice in your head that narrates all your worries. But we also have a kind of movie projector in our minds that plays these unwanted mental pictures, and that's intrusive visual imagery. Think about, replaying an embarrassing moment over and over, or picturing a future failure in vivid detail. This new theory argues that these two types of thought have totally different effects on our brain.
And this leads us to the central idea, the fear simulation model of insomnia. It basically proposes that when our mind's eye projects these vivid, negative images, like picturing yourself getting rejected by friends or failing at work, our ancient, survival-focused brain doesn't know the difference between that and a real physical threat, so it reacts with a genuine fight-or-flight response. And if you do this night after night, your brain learns a really dangerous lesson. Your bed is not a place for rest, it's a place of high alert.
Of course, a theory is one thing, but you gotta have evidence to back it up, right? So the next step for this research was to actually test the connection between these mental movies and sleeplessness.
And this diagram just illustrates that chain reaction perfectly. You start with a modern threat, like being afraid of losing your job. That creates a negative visual image. Your brain then treats this simulated threat as if it's 100% real, triggering a physiological arousal. Your heart starts beating faster. You feel tense. Over time, your bed and your bedroom, which are always there when this happens, they become conditioned triggers themselves. So eventually, just getting into bed can be enough to kickstart that fight-or-flight response, even if you're not actively thinking about the threat.
So, the study was designed to test this exact chain of events. Would people who have more intense intrusive images also report higher levels of pre-sleep arousal and ultimately more severe insomnia?
And the results were pretty significant. This model, with intrusive visual imagery as a key driver, was able to explain over 21% of the difference in insomnia severity among the people in the study. In this kind of research, that is a huge piece of the puzzle. It's strong statistical evidence that the movie projector in our mind is a really powerful engine for sleeplessness.
So, what does this all mean when it comes to actually getting some sleep?
If these unwanted mental pictures are a key part of the problem, well, it opens up some fascinating new strategies.
The research points to a few key approaches. First, and this is a big one, stop fighting it. Trying to suppress an image, like don't think of a pink elephant, only makes you think about it more. Instead, you can try to mindfully observe it without judgment, kind of like watching a cloud pass by in the sky. You can also distract yourself with something neutral. But the most interesting suggestion, the newest one, is the one that targets the visual system directly.
And yes, you're reading that correctly. The thesis actually highlights research showing that playing a visually demanding game like Tetris can help. And why? Well, because it occupies the exact same mental real estate, your visuospatial working memory, that your brain uses to create and hold on to those intrusive images. You literally can't build a Tetris wall and project a worry movie at the same time.
All right, so let's boil this all down to the key takeaways. First, insomnia isn't just some vague thing called stress. It can be driven by a really specific mechanism. Second, those unwanted pictures in your head can be a key cause, maybe even more so than the words. Third, these mental images trigger a real, physical fight or flight response. And finally, this new way of looking at it gives us new tools, even fun ones like video games, to help quiet the mind's eye and maybe, finally, get some rest.
And all of this leaves us with a pretty fascinating final thought. We've just seen how these unwanted images can literally keep us awake and on edge. But if the pictures in our mind are really that powerful, it just begs the question, what other positive changes could we make in our lives just by learning how to better direct the movie projector in our own minds?